Learning about being African American and having endometriosis is quite different. I will say that when Googling my journey, it was interesting. However, me Googling my journey before I was diagnosed, I never knew anything was wrong with me, so I never thought to Google. A lot of times, African American women or women of color are taught to not discuss their menstrual cycle. And for me in particular, I remember my mother sharing or saying to me that it is unladylike to discuss my menstrual cycle. So I refrained from doing that. And because I refrained from doing that, I didn't know anything was wrong. So I wasn't able to say to myself, well, let me get this diagnosis or let me research this and find out what's wrong. Because I thought that my irregular cycles and I thought the pain that I felt was something that was normal. Also, it did not take me long. I was one of the most luckiest people ever to not take about 20 years or 15 years to be diagnosed. I started my menstrual cycle at the age of 13 and I was diagnosed by the age of 20. And that still sounds bad. However, for many African American women, it takes them a lot longer. And that unfortunately stems from systematic racism. That stems from the fact that the father of modern gynecology is someone who operated on African American enslaved people. It also can stem from the fact that we are in situations such as systematic racism when it comes to zoning and how you may not have a really good hospital or have access to a really good doctor to find out if something is wrong or not. So those are some of the barriers. I, for one, unfortunately, to this day, I don't even know how many things hindered me from learning about endometriosis or from me getting the exposure that I needed because, me as an African American woman, I didn't notice a lot of different things. The things I did notice, I made sure that I, communicated about it, where I made sure that I tried to put myself in a better position or even called uh, that person or that situation out. However, you will never know all of the barriers that you face because there are certain things that happen. Dealing with medical professionals that may have bias and you not even know it. So, those are some of the experiences that I've had. I will also say that for endo patients who are of color, endo patients that are African American, when you're going to the doctors, gynecologists, rheumatologists, whoever you're going to for the first time in reference to pain, I would advise you to be open minded. Be open minded. Set your expectations, but understand that everybody may not meet your standard. You also want to make sure that you have everything documented. If you could write down all of the things that may be happening, all of the pain that you may be going through, because you want to give that doctor, that gynecologist, that rheumatologist all of the information ahead of time so that when they're asking you, well, what is this and how did this happen, you're actually giving them descriptions. And to be honest, you may not get the response that you're looking for, unfortunately. I hope that you do get the response that you're looking for, but if you do not, the next best step is to get a second opinion and a third and a fourth. And it may seem very time consuming, however, you want to make sure that the person that's telling you to get help is really helping you. Unfortunately, like I stated before, the modern gynecology, modern day gynecologist, or the father of modern day gynecology, is J. Marion Sims, and he operated on African American enslaved people. So, because of that, there is a notion that African American people, African American women in particular, can deal with pain at different levels than those of any other ethnicity or race. So you have to be mindful that when you're going to the gynecologist, that the gynecologist was founded on the principles of systematic racism. So you want to make sure that you're putting yourself in a healthy position. A lot of times we do not consider mental health when going to hospitals or going to doctors, because we just automatically think that the doctors are there to help us. And 9 times out of 10, they are there to help us. However, unfortunately, sometimes it's to their liking. And you want to make sure that you are not expressing yourself or struggling with expressing yourself, and that doctor is dimming your light or shutting you down or ignoring your pain. You have to make sure that what you're saying sticks, and if it doesn't stick, that you need to find someone else. Pay attention to the mental health that you are going through. Like I stated before, a lot of times when someone is telling you that something is not existent and you're trying to get your point across, or someone is diminishing your comments or the statements that you're making about pain, it can cause you to feel a little crazy. It can cause you to feel like everything is in your head, because a lot of times you do have medical professionals actually telling you that. So you need to be mindful of that experience. You want to make sure that you are not allowing someone to dictate every little thing about you, especially with your mental involved. I also want to share that it is important as an African American woman or a person that we make sure that we are paying attention to what we're eating. In our culture, we like something called soul food, and everybody loves soul food. But unfortunately, soul food is not always good food. And with it not always being good food, you have to make sure that you are tracking what you're eating. Soul food can be the cause of so many health concerns, so many health disparities, such as high cholesterol, diabetes, uh, just even obesity, things of that nature. You want to make sure that you are paying attention to the foods that you're eating and the food that you're putting in your body, because unfortunately it can be a trigger. It can be a flare up. So you have to make sure that you're paying attention. A lot of times we really don't think of that. And knowing that I'm not suggesting that you go to a keto diet. I'm not suggesting that you go to a vegan diet. There is no particular diet that assists women that have endometriosis. You just have to do your research and do a trial and error to see what you're good with and what you're not good with. So be mindful of that. So, like I said, you want to make sure that you are researching the doctors that you're going to. You want to make sure that you're doing research. And now that we are in 2020, I do hope that the research has changed from when I was diagnosed in 2011. There are more African American women, there are more women of color. Though there is not as much, it is important that representation is taken into consideration. It's very important, because when you're discussing your hair textures, when you're discussing your skin, when you're discussing food, when you're discussing things that happen or things that African American people like, or that we deal with or that we go through, you want to make sure that that's something that you're paying attention to. So with that being said, that's all I have to share. I want to make sure that you are taking good care of yourselves and monitoring and managing your endometriosis in the best way that you know how.